Hello everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today, focusing on dHCI, so the simplicity of HCI and the flexibility of Converged. So I'm Amy Hammond, I work in the marketing team at Bytes, and I'm delighted to be joined by Daniel Cree from HPE, who's going to present the webinar for you.
Wonderful. Okay, so yeah, good morning everyone. My name's Dan Cree. I am a pre-sales consultant in the UK and Ireland for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Also part of a small pre-sales team within HPE called the SMB Pirates. So that's what I do. Anyway, but the agenda for today's session. So first I'm going to talk about the challenges that VM admins face on a daily basis. We're also going to identify the differences between the converged and the hyperconverged infrastructure and the benefits that they bring. What makes a Nimble Storage dHCI solution? I'll talk about that in a lot more detail. Then for the second part of the session today, I'm going to do a demonstration where we will cover the monitoring aspect, where we will use Info Site, just to give you an idea of some of the information that we can pull, but also collect some of the insights as well. So to start off the session anyway, so first I'm going to talk about the issues that IT admins face on a daily basis. When we look at data centers today, VM admins are currently struggling to deal with the complexity of their infrastructure, which can slow down the time to market. They also have to be very reactive, where they have to fight fires, which can take up resources and time, but also you end up having to deal with uncontrolled VM sprawl. However, there's always other pressures as well. Financially, so they're also under pressure to lower costs as and when they can, but they're also under pressure to do more with less, or when they're working around and using their own workloads. So those are the typical challenges that an IT admin tends to face today. So first, let's talk about hyperconvergence. So hyperconvergence has completely changed IT infrastructure. It has improved the experience for the VM admin, as it can make things a hell of a lot more simple. This is normally done using a software-defined scale-out file system. The physical infrastructure is abstracted, everything is VM-centric, policies are automated, and it's managed within a single pool of resources that you can directly manage out of VMware vCenter. Scaling the infrastructure is also incredibly simple. This is because all you need to do is add a single node to the cluster. However, the one identifiable thing with hyperconvergence though is that as you grow storage and your compute, normally done together. So it's great for those with a predictable growth where they can actually maximize their agility. But the question I would ask around hyperconvergence is, what happens when you have workloads which have basically a demand or an imbalance between compute and storage? So unpredictable workloads, these will normally require different amounts of compute and storage, and this is where a converged solution can come in. This is where admins can independently scale as and when they need to. And that's what makes converged architectures great for workload consolidation. This is where the customer can add more compute and storage as and when they need to, so they can then improve the efficiency around their own resources. The main issue though, or the main challenge that we end up having to have with other free-tier converged architectures, such as a VxBlock and FlexPod, relates to the complexity and the management of the infrastructure. Vendors have tried to resolve this challenge with the use of like a GUI wrapper, but while still having this in use, you end up having to dedicate administration, but you also have that siloed management as well. And this is where you end up having to sacrifice the agility for flexibility. But what if I ask this question? What if you can have the simple hyperconverged experience for unpredictable workloads, where you can gain control from a hyperconverged infrastructure, but add this to a scalable converged infrastructure? And this is where we come along. So this is Nimble dHCI. So this is a platform which delivers the flexibility of a converged infrastructure with the simplicity of hyperconvergence. This completely disaggregates compute and storage and delivers it with hyperconverged control using HPE Pro-like servers and the self-managing storage in Nimble. So the main benefits we can deliver, first is the simple management for those workloads, whilst delivering the performance and the resiliency for the virtual machines. We can deliver 6 nines of data availability with sub-millisecond latency at very high performance. It can also give you the opportunity to scale compute and storage non-disruptively. But now we're going to talk about these benefits in a little bit more detail. So now when it comes to the active management, Nimble dHCI is as simple as hyperconvergence. As we have extended that control to the system, we've made it simple to deploy, manage, scale, and support. So around it being very simple to set up. So through the dHCI setup software and the VMware vCenter plugin, dHCI can automate the server and storage deployment, configuration, provisioning, and cluster setup for the VM admin. A customer can self-install the entire system at scale from rack to applications, ready to add data in around 12 to 15 minutes, and it can additionally be done in less than 5 clicks without requiring any external tools or software. So normally though, with the challenge with other converged solutions out there is that this would normally involve hundreds of steps to set up, and it wouldn't be a straightforward process. It's also very simple to manage. So using the VMware vCenter console, you have that VM-centric data services and resource management that don't require any separate appliances or element managers. Around scaling dHCI, so new storage and servers can get added to the cluster non-disruptively, and they can automatically be discovered, which it can then be transparently added to deal with those workloads. However, around the support piece, and this is a massive part of Nimble Storage dHCI, which I'm going to highlight later on during the session. And this is where we can actually gain full stack predictive analytics and support, which can predict and prevent issues. All issues can then be also, any issues that say do appear and aren't able to be dealt with immediately, they can then get auto-routed directly to level 3 Nimble Storage support. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. So when it actually comes to managing the performance of your nodes and your arrays, it tends to be a very reactive, labor-intensive performance. And it's normally, and when issues do occur, it's normally very difficult to identify the source of the issue and the root cause to those bottlenecks. It also requires putting a lot of logs together, a lot of data, and you have to manually try to correlate this over several amount of screens. And this would be across the storage, the network, but also the host as well, just to understand what exactly is going on. However, with Nimble dHCI, we can actually say goodbye to the reactiveness and the firefighting. Additionally, we can also save time, and there's less need for those long nights and weekends working. So instead of searching for that needle in the haystack, we can actually automatically collect data across your stack in your environment with full stack correlations, which can then give you that source of truth and immediately find the source of the issue. So we can do things such as finding the root cause of latency across your host, your storage, or your SAN. We can identify, say, those noisy neighbors or those disruptive VMs, in which, say, resources for those have been intended to be used for other VMs. We can gain visibility into host CPU and metrics, where we can check for unplugged memory leaks. Then we can actually gain visibility into those VMs that are inactive and repurpose and reclaim those underutilized hosts. I'm going to show you more of that when I go into the demonstration shortly. However, talking in a bit more detail about the support experience anyway. So with any issues that do appear within your infrastructure, normally a case would appear. However, the one statistic I want to put across to you, with 86% of issues that do occur within the stack, they automatically open a case but then be resolved and automatically are resolved. And this is normally before, in a lot of cases where the administrator wouldn't know what the issue is. If there's any issues that can't be dealt with from the level 1 and 2 perspective, this will then be escalated to a level 3 case, in which it will then be passed on to an engineer. When the engineer receives the case, in a lot of situations, it's actually the case the support engineer will actually call you, the customer, to raise the issue before you become aware of it. So we've actually found the rapid root cause of the issue, and we can then highlight and identify next steps in order to deal with the issue. So with our experiences, it's gained quite a good reputation. We've had a 4.91 rating out of 5 in terms of the support satisfaction. However, whenever you call, say, Nimble dHCI support, you'll get through to a level 3 engineer in less than 1 minute. Once you get through to them, you won't end up having to explain what the issue is. As long as you raise that case number, the support engineer will have all the information from their end in which they can then take action on immediately. So moving on to the architecture itself and around the scaling, because the architecture disaggregates the compute and storage, we can actually drive higher efficiencies. So we can do that on premise, but also out to the public cloud. So this is where we can scale those servers and storage flexibly, where we can say meet those requirements, whether it's needed for performance or more capacity. So for example, like in transactional databases, where there's an increased load in compute resource, or say on the other hand, in data warehouses where you actually need more capacity, whether you're actually okay with the amount of compute performance that you have. However, the beauty of scaling though, is that, going back to my point on InfoSite, is that it can tell you when and how much resources you need, or how you can repurpose those resources so you fully optimize without any guesswork on your hand. So first, it's simple, but additionally, it's incredibly flexible. And so in turn, this means that whatever you've deployed, that there's no over provisioning, there's no resources being wasted, and you only add what you need. The upgrades are very transparent, and it's very non-disruptive to your applications. So next, I want to ask the question, or one of the questions you may be wondering right now, is what exactly makes a dHCI solution? Just wait for this slide to load. So this is, as you can see from the images, this is typically what you'd get in a Nimble dHCI solution. So first, you've got 2 top-of-rack switches. So these either tend to consist of Cisco 3K Nexus switches, Aruba 8300 series switches, HPE Flex Fabric series switches, or HPE M series switches. Around the management, so this is all done within VMware vCenter. You've also got the integration stack manager and the integrated stack setup. So whenever you want to configure your stack or set up any arrays or nodes to add to that environment, that's where you normally use the stack manager and the stack setup. When it comes to the hypervisor, we normally recommend that you be on either VMware vSphere 6.5 or 6.7. Moving on to the compute, so so around the compute itself, you can have either DL360 ProLines or DL380. This can either be, well, either Gen 9 or Gen 10. So if you, the customer, have already got a couple of ProLine DL360 or DL380 Gen 9 or Gen 10 servers in your environment, you can then repurpose those to become part of a dHCI solution. In terms of the requirement for those servers though, we need Intel Xeon processors. You can have up to 2 processors per server as well, 3 terabytes of memory. However, we also required, in terms of the network connectivity, we required 10 gig. Then last but not least, we've got the Nimble storage. So any Nimble storage array, whether it may be HF or an AF series array, that can be added to the infrastructure stack. So the one thing to identify only is that around the array and the connectivity, it must be iSCSI. Now, when it comes to monitoring your stack, that's when it's all done with HPE InfoSite, which I'll demonstrate in just a second. So the additional thing I wanted to highlight around the support for Nimble Storage dHCI is around the support. So Nimble Support actually deals with the overall support for the dHCI solution. So with all Nimble arrays, it's covered by Nimble Support. So if you've got the integration software, the ProLine DLs, but also from the switching side, so specifically with HPE M series switches and Aruba and Flex Fabric switches, that is then covered under the same support agreement. So normally in terms of the minimum requirements, so any care package, any care pack that you have applied to those products, it would automatically get escalated or uplifted, and which will then be covered by Nimble Support. So that's one of the main benefits of having that whole solution in the stack, is that whole support experience is then covered throughout the products that are in the stack. So the next thing I'm going to do a quick demonstration of Info Site. So if I...
Dan, quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We've got a couple of questions that have come through. Are you okay to answer those before you go into the demo?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's perfectly fine, Amy.
So the first question is, what's the main difference between Nimble and HPE SimpliVity?
Okay, so to be fair, I'm quite glad you asked me that question. So let me put up this slide. So yeah, so this is, I think, generally from our point of view, is always a common question, is that there's always a grey area around the differences between SimpliVity and Nimble Storage. And I'll say it can overlap in some ways. However, just to identify, say, the areas where you probably may need a SimpliVity solution. So, for example, if you were wanting to run Hyper-V within your solution, that's when we normally advise for SimpliVity. If space is a strong requirement when you need the most a very dense solution, that's when you would also consider SimpliVity. In terms of the deployment itself, if you want something with smaller physical memory requirements, that's also where we advise for SimpliVity. There's also a high node count, so if you've got a lot of nodes within your infrastructure and you want to manage it all within one place, SimpliVity is very useful around that. But additionally, I think one of the main USPs for SimpliVity as well is what's actually built into the solution, because you have backup, disaster recovery. Additionally, you've got WAN optimization built into the solution itself. So that's where you'd consider if you consider a SimpliVity solution. Whereas Nimble Storage dHCI, on the other hand, if you've got larger memory requirements, or if there's higher performance demands, in particular if you've got, say, IOPS in terms of throughput IOPS that are around over 60,000, that's potentially where you may potentially want to consider a Nimble Storage array. If you've also got larger VMs as well, if in terms of your VM, if you've got some large ones, so whether they may be 5, 10, 15 terabytes in space, that's probably where you may want to consider may want to consider a Nimble dHCI solution, because that's what can effectively say deal with those sort of size VMs. So if there's a very high performance requirement or very high storage requirement, that's what I'd advise at the end of the day for a Nimble dHCI solution.
Thanks, Dan. The same person's asked, I think you answered this actually, will it ever support Hyper-V as a hypervisor?
So I know at the moment we say we're only supporting VMware, but I'm aware it's on the roadmap to look to be able to support Hyper-V. I can't actually provide a timescale as to when that development will come through. However, I know with SimpliVity, on the other hand, it does support both Hyper-V and VMware vSphere.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to carry on with the demonstration anyway now, and what I've done is I've minimised the slide here. And you can now see the Info Site dashboard. So this is essentially an infrastructure monitoring tool that you can use to monitor your infrastructure. So you can look at monitoring your servers, your storage, but the great thing about this is the fact that the way it operates and the way it manages and deals with data. But in terms of like the process, in terms of how it performs, we first basically collect the data, we monitor what's going on. We like to learn from what we picked up. From that, we then make predictions of that data that's come through, and we normally compare this with a global pool of data we've collected from other arrays around the world. We then make recommendations following from that, which I'll show you some. I'll show you some as I demonstrate this. But then once we then make those recommendations, there are cases which will then take action based off those recommendations in a split second, which we can then deal with any immediate issues. But I'm going to carry on with this demo, and you can see on your screen I'm on the operational dashboard for the Info Site. So as you can see to your left here, we've got 4 arrays. So they're all streaming, they're all showing performance here. But what's great about this, you can actually hover your mouse over one of these arrays. You can actually look at a very specific timestamp as to the throughput, the latency. However, what's great about InfoSite is that we can actually identify the potential impacts from the amount of latency that pops through. The one point I want to put across it though is it's not exactly about the amount of latency that the array is facing. It's the potential impact, and this is something that HPE can recognise. So as you can see, I've got 4 arrays here. If I scroll down here though, you can see the top 10 VMs. So this is where we can highlight VMs, well, the top 10 performing from I/O and latency. So you can identify here that this VM has got the most IOPS here. We've got 95 million in this one. Whereas if I look across, we've got latency, or focusing on the latency itself, you can identify that this VM is producing 242 milliseconds. But this is recorded over the last 24 hours, and we can normally rank which ones stand out the most. As I scroll up here though to the top right, we can see that we've got 5 arrays within the Nimble Storage environment. There's a heartbeat, so the heartbeat in Cool Home, on this account anyway, it's not it's not performing. However, so this basically means that nothing's been no information being called back to Info Site, but say that in a lot of cases normally recommend that would be up and running, but in this situation it's not. Around the protection, so this focuses around snapshots. So you can identify here that say 70% of the volumes within this environment have been protected. So we can see that say 41 volumes, so had snapshots have been located locally, but then there's also 21 of those which you can then identify those that have been sent remotely. As I scroll down though, you can actually look into the capacity. So this focuses around InfoSite's ability to identify whenever arrays or volumes are potentially filling up or have filled up completely. So under here we can see under the critical, under volumes, that there are 3 notifications for this. So what I can actually do, and what's really good about this, I can expand on it. We can identify that these 3 volumes are actually at 100% data usage. We can also view the amount of compression and whether it's deduplicating, but we can also view the past growth from the past 30, 60, and 19 days. If I go back to the dashboard there, so next I'm going to go to the executive dashboard. What's fantastic about this section of the InfoSite dashboard is the fact that you can extract this data, and it's actually very presentable. You can email this, so whether that may be to your CFO or your manager, you can then actually send this data across, which you can then present to them and identify if there's any cause for concern. So here we can see the space savings. So in this case, so this is typically what you'd see in a VDI environment. So this is where we've had more deduplication and compression, where basically the total capacity. So this was pre-savings. This is the usable capacity within the arrays themselves. We've got 90.32 terabytes. However, we've managed to save 30 terabytes from compression, 44 terabytes from deduplication. However, this is the physical space or the physical capacity that is taken up within the arrays itself. Also run a scroll here, scroll down, we can actually view the amount of cases that have been automatically opened and closed. So from here, we can actually see in this case, even though this hasn't had many cases, only had one case that's been automatically opened but manually closed. In our customers, they generally experience 86% of cases that are automatically opened and closed. So that's normally what's very useful here. We can clearly see what's been going on in terms of the issues and cases around that. We can also take a look into data protection. So this focuses around snapshots, how often they're taken. However, the one thing I can identify around this is that with your Nimble array, with your volumes, you can actually tag them to your workloads. So by doing that, we can then identify the percentage of that application data has been used for specific purposes. So whether it's around snapshots or around the retention of those snapshots, anyway, we can focus on that as well. Additionally, we can also select and deselect workloads from here. So if you were to export that data, that can simply be selected and deselected. As I move down as well, we can also view the application data that has been replicated remotely or locally as well. However, at the bottom of the screen, we've got the upgrade needs. This is normally a very useful section if there are any alerts or any issues, especially around the CPU and around the CPU memory performance. So what we can do here, if there is an over demand or if there's been any over provisioning around the array and around the array or performance, what we can do, or what the info site can do, it can actually make a recommendation based off the activity on what to exactly upgrade to and how to do it. So luckily in this case, no upgrades are recommended. However, when that appears, you can actually export that and send it onwards, and it will say, an info site will tell you exactly what you need to upgrade to. So this highlights the recommendations aspect of the info site portal. Next, I'm going to move to the wellness dashboard. So this, luckily enough, isn't showing any outstanding issues. However, when I move on to the server side or the host side of the info site demo, it will produce a similar dashboard. But in this case, we haven't got any outstanding issues. When there's any maintenance that you may need to perform onto your array, we normally recommend that you perform maintenance windows. So by doing that, it will then won't produce any alerts in which will then be passed on to info site support. Next, I'm going to move on to the capacity. So this is where we can view all pools within the arrays. We can actually identify how much of that capacity has been used, the amount that's unused, what's free as well. We can identify the amount of volumes and the savings that we've made from this as well. If I scroll down here, we can actually view this by pools, applications, and volumes as well. And we can actually take a look into the actual space. We can actually look into, take a deeper dive into the metrics where you can view the usage and identify what we've actually saved in terms of compression and deduplication. Also identify the previous growth as well. The next area I'm going to move on to now, I'm going to highlight the virtualization side of the VMware side of the monitoring. And what's fantastic about this is that we can actually go from the data center level where you can view from there, we can dive all the way down to the disk level, and I'm about to show this here. So here we can actually see that we've got two data centers. What we can do is we can actually view the clusters within that. So with this one that I'm opening, when it loads, it'll load in just a second. Demos being demos. Okay, I'll tell you what. In the meantime, what I'll do is actually I'm going to move on to the server side of the demonstration anyway. So next, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the servers that so monitoring your servers and what we can do around that. So first I've got the operational dashboard for the server. So we can view that we've got two servers that are in a healthy condition. We can identify that we've got two servers that are in a cautious state. So we can sort of expand on that as well. We can see that we've got 4 arrays that are currently on and operating. We can look at the connectivity as well. So we can see that we've got 4 servers within the environment. They're calling back to Info Site. So they're in good nick. But we can also view the appliances within that as well. So that's mainly around the amplifier pack within ProLine. If I scroll down here though, we can actually take a look at the health issues. So here we can see that we can identify that there's actually issues here with the power supply units. So there's 2 issues here. We can expand on that. We can see which where those issues lie. We can also take a look into the warranty and support status, whether it's still active or whether it's expired. We can take a look into identify what the generation of those servers are, the age of those servers, and whether they're compliant with Service Pack for ProLine. So with this, so by the SPP compliance, we can actually identify whether you may need to apply any hot fixes or whether it's non-compliant. The next one I'm going to show you around the servers though is the wellness dashboard. So this is very similar to what you see in the wellness dashboard for Nimble Storage. So this is where we can, this is basically like a health bar. If there's any aches pains within this environment, this will appear in which Info Site or Info Site support they'll become aware of. So we can identify here that we've got 3 issues with the security. If I scroll down here, this is where we can view a list of those issues, and this is where we can view a list of those issues, which you can then find a bit more information on. What you can do, if it's the case that those issues have been dealt with, you can then click on those and then click Acknowledge. So that basically covers the server side aspects of the demonstration anyway. So going back to the VMware aspect though, so we're going to take a look into the ESXi host. So what I was going to show on the cluster page is that we can actually find that there's 2 clusters in that, and I've delved basically into the ESXi host, which actually views all of them between those 2 clusters. From this, we can then actually take a look into the CPU usage, but also the memory, the data usage, whether it's actually increased or ballooned or not. As I move on to the data stores, so this is where we can view a list of the data stores for VMware or for that environment on those arrays. We could actually take a look into, yet again, the usage shows very similar insights, but then also what we'll do is delve into that and have a look into the VMs. The one thing I want to show you now is around the VM and the visualization that the Info Site dashboard can produce. Even though I've shown you lists here, what I can do here is actually can delve deeper. So what we can do, we can actually take a look into the memory contention trends, the CPU contention trends, but we can also have a visual, we can take a look at it from a visual standpoint. So this is where Info Site can draw, basically you can draw a map of your your data store, of your vCenter. And this is where we can identify which data stores are bigger, which data stores are smaller, and where the issues lie. So you can see here, as you can see here from the virtual machine latency, it goes from a white where there's no latency at all to a nice solid red, which identifies that there's latency. What we can also do though, we can expand on that area where we can identify the latency within that data store. We can also look, delve a bit deeper, identify where the latency lies. So we can see here that there's latency within this VM, and there's latency within this VM as well. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to expand on this VM. We can then take a look into the performance for these VMs. But what we can do here, we can actually identify the performance of this, the capacity statistics for the VM, but also where, in terms of where the VM lies, which disks they sit on. So here we can view the capacity, but also we can identify here the VM sits on two hard disk drives. So this is where we can identify the reads, the writes, the average latency as well, but also the throughput. So hopefully it gives you an idea in terms of the insights, where we can actually down from the data center level all the way down to the disk level. And that pretty much concludes the demonstration for me. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the presentation now, because I want to summarize on a few quick points for you. So firstly, the first point I want to identify is the fact that with dHCI, it's incredibly easy to scale and set up your arrays and nodes. So what we can do from racking your servers, your storage and networking, we can get that to perform and operate within 15 minutes. So this is where we can actually deliver application performance. We can then actually end that firefighting as well with less reactiveness, and with the use of Nimble Site and support, we can then guarantee six nines of data availability. So this equates to about 31 seconds of downtime every year. Then last but not least, you actually get to make the most of what you got in your environment. So via the recommendations that InfoSites put forward, you can then, it will then lead to not actually wasting any resources that you have within your environment. So those are the final points I wanted to put across to you. Finally, I just want to say thank you, but I want to ask Amy, are there any more questions at all before we conclude?
Yeah, so we've had another one second. So this question says, the only difference I see using HP switch fabric and HP servers is to avoid having 3 support contracts with Cisco or another vendor. Would the Nimble storage issues be managed by HP, or do we need to get in touch with Nimble Support?
So Nimble Support will, in the dHCI solution, Nimble Support will deal with those issues. Yeah. So if, let's say, for example, if you didn't have a dHCI solution but you had ProLiants, HPE support, HP ProLiant support will deal with it. However, in a dHCI solution, Nimble Support will deal with the issue because it's part of the solution. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Okay, so if you do have any more questions, there is a questions tab just to the right hand side of your screen. If you pop them in there, I'll read those out for Dan. We'll just wait a couple more minutes. We've got our email address there if you did want to submit any outside of the webinar today.
Awesome. So I was going to thank you all for your time this morning, guys. But there's one more thing I wanted to point out and put across to you. So Hewlett Packard Enterprise at the moment are offering free consultancy, and what we're doing here is that we're offering a free assessment to you free of charge Normally this assessment will cost around about £1,500. And this is where we can actually identify any issues within your environment, where we can take a look into your servers, your storage and networking, where we can find ways in which we can optimize what you've got. If there's any issues, this is any issues or any areas that need to be addressed, this is something that we can help you with. So what we do, we can run an assessment. Once we've, it's like an MOT basically for your IT environment. But if this is something that you're interested in, or something that you'd like to talk about in a bit more detail, if you can say if you want to respond to the survey, if you are interested in considering this at all, or if you want to talk about it in more detail, you can actually highlight that with your Bytes account manager. But yeah, if you've got any more questions though, you're more than welcome. Yes, more than welcome to ping Amy the questions, and I can deal with it offline. But yeah, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning, and I want to wish you the best for the rest of your day. So thank you very much, and over to you, Amy.
Brilliant, thank you, Dan. So I don't think we've got any more questions today from the looks of things. So thank you, Dan, for presenting, and thank you so much everyone for joining the webinar today, taking the time out of your busy days. Really hope you found it valuable. As mentioned at the beginning, I'll send you a link to the recording this afternoon or tomorrow morning for you to view. And there is a very short questionnaire at the end. So if you would like any further information, or if you're interested in the assessment, or just any feedback in general for us, please do pop that in there. We really appreciate it. Okay, so thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day today.